everybody, welcome to the first episode of In the Studio with Michelle McCune. That's me. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the YouTube channel In the Studio with Michelle McCune. You can also follow me on Facebook, on Instagram, and my website is www.michellemccunedvm.com. The DVM is Doctor of Veterinary Medicine, so I am an artist, but I'm also a veterinarian. I only paint wildlife. Animals are my passion, they always have been. And art for conservation is one of my main goals. We're going to talk today about this fundamental art class. This is a class for everybody. I'm going to tell you a little more about who I am and my background and why you should bother listening to me, and then who this class is for and what my goals are for it, what the overall class overview is going to be, what we're going to cover and what we're not going to cover. So let's just kind of jump right on in. First of all, as I said, I'm a veterinarian. I grew up in Illinois. I live in California now. When I was younger, I was always chasing animals around, and anytime I had blank paper, I'd always be drawing animals, drawing little cartoon dogs and cats and dragons, sketching what I would see in the clouds, which almost always were some kind of animal, so common theme here. As I kind of went through, my childhood, my older sister I looked up to a lot. Her name is Krista, and she's an artist, and she was an art major, and I always wanted to be like her. So we did lots of arts and crafts together throughout our childhood. When I was graduating from 8th grade, there was an art award, and I coveted this art award. I wanted it so badly. So I won the award. That was like one of my first accomplishments that I can remember, as an adult. Is something that just really, really meant so much to me. I still have the little trophy somewhere in a box. And I beat out someone who used to bully me. So I was really happy to beat my bully too. So we've all had them. Anyways, so that was kind of the start of recognition and validation that I felt from my art. Through high school, I did take some art classes. Belonged to the art club, things like that, but I was going to focus on sciences. So I knew I wanted to go pre-vet, and I did a lot of my focus on my core science. I went to the University of Illinois for my undergraduate. I got my bachelor's degree in 3 years and went on to veterinary school. I was very, very, very obviously committed to what I was studying at the time. I didn't have a lot of time for my art. When I was in undergrad, though, I did hang a big sheet on my bedroom wall of my apartment, and whenever I had a few extra dollars, I would go and buy a tube of paint. This is the only abstract I've ever done, but I painted this big, bright, bold, primary color, big palm frond thing that covered my entire wall, and it was just like an outlet that I needed. I didn't realize that at the time either, but looking back, hindsight's always 20/20. So that was undergrad. I went on to veterinary school. Didn't do much anything artistic during veterinary school. It's a pretty intense program. I did have one of my classmates who was actually a year behind me who did a lot of pencil drawings, and she got one of them on the cover of the Journal of the American Veterinary Medical Association, or JAVMA. And I was very envious. I was envious of her talent because at the time I didn't know that I had it in me. I thought it was so great that she was doing this while going through veterinary school. Later on, I actually did get one of my paintings on the cover of JAVMA as well, so it all kind of came around, just took me a little bit longer to get there. So while I was in veterinary school, there a couple of really important things happened. I had a grant to study free-ranging wildlife, and so I talked to my boss at the time. His name was Dr. Barry Bavister. I was working in a reproductive physiology lab doing embryo transfer on hamsters, and I asked him if he knew of any projects for free-ranging wildlife, because I wanted to get this grant. So he said, well, do you want to go to Namibia and study cheetahs? I had never been out of the country. I didn't even know what or where Namibia was. So I'm like, what's Namibia? And yes. One of his technicians at the time was working with the Cheetah Conservation Fund and put me in touch with Dr. Lori Marker. CCF was a new organization at the time, and on a borrowed farm. It is now one of the top world-class conservation groups that there are. Dr. Marker was just an incredible powerhouse of a woman and had a great vision for conservation through education and through problem solving. There's a lot of encroaching bush, so they actually came up with a way to take all of that encroaching bush and turn it into fuel logs, which created fuel, created jobs for people. They instituted livestock guarding dog programs to reduce predation with farmers. I can go on and on and on. I recommend anyone look up Cheetah Conservation Fund and just see the incredible work that they do. So I had this was really kind of my introduction to conservation, and it really ignited a passion in me. So I did about 6.5 weeks there, came back, went back to veterinary school. In my last year of vet school, we do what are called externships, where you go and work other places for a couple of weeks. And I had one externship out in a zoo in Rhode Island, and I did another one down at Fossil Rim Wildlife Center in Glen Rose, Texas, which is a drive-through wildlife park. They've got a bunch of rhinos, and they've got cheetahs, and they've got a bunch of antelope and zebras and all sorts of things. So really cool place if you're ever outside of Dallas. So I had some really cool experiences, and I really wanted to be a wildlife vet, but I knew I had to build up my fundamentals in my medical and surgical skills, and also a lot of it is kind of who you know. So I ended up graduating from veterinary school. I also wanted a family, and I wanted a base. I wanted a home base. I didn't want to be some traveling field vet, and my husband was an engineer, so that wouldn't have matched anyways. So we settled down, and I said, before we have kids, I want to go back to Africa. So we went to Zimbabwe, and I believe that was probably 1998 or 1999. Before all the turmoil happened in Zimbabwe, we had a wonderful just tourism safari. It was really, really cool. Got to see amazing species, learned a whole lot, and really kept that passion going for me for conservation and for African species. So we came back, and my son was born in 2000, and then in about the very start of 2001, when my son was a few months old, my art sister, who I was fortunate enough to live relatively close by at the time, we were in Illinois, said, come to painting class with me. And I said, Krista, I don't paint. I'm like, I don't paint. She's like, no, it's just social. It's, a bunch of people just kind of get together and paint for a couple of hours, and there was an instructor. So I started going, and it was a couple hours, like one night a week. And there was a substitute teacher one night, and they start you with drawing. So they start you with still lifes and charcoal, which is not my happy place. But you had to do it, so I did it. And the substitute teacher looked at my work, and she said, I predict that in 5 years you'll be a full-time artist and you won't be a veterinarian anymore. And I laughed at her. I'm like I did all this schooling, and what I'm doing still lifes, and this is no fun, and there's no way that's going to happen. So it was kind of interesting for me that I'm here now. If you want to jump way back in time, in kindergarten, they always ask little kids what they want to be, and I said I wanted to be a doctor or an artist or work with animals. So my little kindergarten self was pretty wise. So what had happened from there is I continued to do this little art class a night a week. When I was pregnant with my daughter, who was born in 2002, I went and found a different place to paint that was closer to my house. Honestly, the oil paint fumes when I was pregnant made me really nauseous. And so hauling my painting back and forth for over half an hour drive just wasn't working. So I started working with a woman named Lisa Bakhta, who was in Illinois at the time, and learned a lot from her. It's just tremendous, and I met some of my best friends through the small painting groups that we had with her. So again, it was a day a week. So sometimes I would try to paint a little bit at home. My daughter was born in 2002, so I now have 2 little kids, and I was working and trying to paint when I could. I discovered workshops. Workshops really changed my life, especially not having had any formal art education. So the first workshop I did was with the late Terry Isaac and another fabulous artist, Susan Labori, and they did what they called the Complete Artist Workshop. And these were held out in Kalispell, Montana, working with a wildlife farm called Triple D, where they have captive wildlife that they train, and they work with photographers and artists with their animals. So the animals are captive, which means they are kept in cages, but they are trained, they're kept in wild condition, and they're a very responsible place that doesn't do a bunch of breeding indiscriminately. So really, really, really good, respectable organization. Still not the same as seeing animals in the wild, but when you need reference, it's a great place to be. And Terry was a very, very wonderful, giving person. He had been a high school art teacher before he became a full-time artist, so he was very good for teaching these workshops. And he was my introduction to some of the art fundamentals that we're going to start going through with this class. So he went over a lot of the fundamentals. He did a great thing where he would do critiques of his own work, where he would put slideshows and show some of the things that worked and some of the things that didn't. So I thought that was very brave of him, number one, but I also thought it was great that he wasn't putting down anybody else. He was just saying, hey, look, these are what worked and what didn't work. So he was really just one of the sweetest people you could ever meet. I did their workshop 2 more times, and God, throughout this time, I've really, the value of workshops was amazing. You're with other artists, you're learning, you're being inspired. Some of these artists were full-time artists, one of which was like working for a zoo and doing like in educational art, and it was just really amazing what all these different people were doing. I have found wildlife artists in general to be very, very giving and very open people. It wasn't like, oh, we have these secrets and we're not going to really tell you how I do this because you might paint like me. Everyone's really open and everyone has a similar passion. So it was really great. In 2006, so I'm going to just kind of pull this magazine out here. So this is the January-February issue of a magazine called Wildlife Art, which sadly is no longer in publication. And I got a hold of this magazine, and the artist who's on the cover, so this is John Banovich. He's really someone who I just really look up to. He's an amazing artist, and he also does a lot of conservation work. He has started his own conservation foundations. He's kind of like one of the rock stars of the wildlife art world, so to speak. But he's very humble, and he's very giving, and he's very, very philosophical. I'm going to, I've got like my little notes to kind of keep me on track here. For the most part, I'm trying not to like sit there and stare at them, because how fun is that to watch? But I am going to read off one quote that was taken, like excerpts taken from the article from John Banovich. He said, "There is no great nobility in creating an incredible painting. If I am going to be remembered for anything, it is just as a person who caused people to think and realize how important wildlife is. The art is not the objective. It is the vehicle whose destination is to leave a greater appreciation for wild things and wild places." This resonated with me. It just hit me deep in my core, because I had had these great experiences in Namibia with CCF, with Fossil Burn Wildlife Center, but I was working as a small animal vet and raising a family, and I felt like I wasn't really doing enough for conservation. It seemed like such a waste. Like, why would I have these great experiences and not be able to do more with them? And I didn't want to just write out a check. I mean, don't get me wrong, these groups need money. But I wanted to be able to make more of a difference. This was the first time that I ever really made the connection that art is a way to do that. To seeing art as a vehicle for education and for inspiration, and that art and conservation together really are powerful. So I got really excited, and I decided I really want to pursue this, and I really want to develop my skills, and I want to take it further so I can use my art to make a difference. I joined a group called the Artists for Conservation in 2008. The same year, my sister Krista had started a local art festival in our hometown in Mundelein. And she said, well, if I start this, you have to show your work. And this was scary to me. I didn't have frames. I didn't know the first thing about business. I didn't have a display, nothing. But she committed and I committed, and I've been showing my art really since 2008. I also was like one of those other, again, validation moments, joining Artists for Conservation. One of my pieces that I submitted to their juried art show got in this first year. And that was really exciting. I've been in Artists for Conservation now multiple times. I've had works in their show and published in their books, and they're an incredible group where everybody is dedicated to donating a portion of proceeds to conservation and educating. So it's really, again, a group that resonates with me and that really speaks to me, and I'm very, very proud to be a member of. So things keep building. John Banovich did a workshop. He doesn't do very many. He also did a Kenya trip with the artist from this first workshop. So that was the first time I went to Kenya. And this, again, these are things that are just life-changing trips for me. With his workshop, he asked one time, what makes an artist? So this is kind of a rhetorical question. It's one to kind of start a discussion. And this is one that I'm going to throw out to any of you who feel like you shouldn't be doing this because you're not an artist. You don't know how to paint. You don't know how to do these things. So hold on. Like, don't that self-doubt. You don't need it. So many of us are like, he's like, well, so what's an artist? Is Is a true artist someone who sells full-time, successfully, who's in all these galleries, in all these shows, winning all these awards? Is a true artist someone who's doing it part-time? Someone like me, who's just trying to learn and raise a family and has another career? A weekend painter. Is it someone who paints in oils? You know, oils are the best. Is it someone who does pastels? Someone who does acrylics? Someone who does gouache or watercolor? Someone who decorates cakes? Someone who crochets little toilet paper covers? Who is one of them more of an artist than another? What's a real artist? So as we're all having our own thoughts and our little table discussions, a few minutes later he says, okay, everyone here, how many of you have ever stopped doing your art for whatever reason? And there were probably, I think there were about 50 people in this workshop, and about 8 of us raised our hands. He said, and what happened? Every single one of us who raised our hands, myself was included, had either ended up on antidepressant medication or ended up in therapy for depression. He said, there's the key. He said, an artist is someone who needs to create, plain and simple. Whether your creation is cooking, your creation is music, your creation is painting, is drawing, it doesn't matter what it is. An artist is someone who needs to create. Now my family can tell you, if I haven't been painting for a while, I'm cranky. I'm more irritable. So by being able to paint, I'm able to be a better mother. I'm a better wife. I'm a better doctor. So it was something that I've always needed. And I've done it periodically, but I didn't realize why. And it was just because it was something inherent in me. I don't want anyone to be afraid. There's no reason to be afraid. First of all, painting is just paint. So what? Doesn't turn out? Okay, you do another one. You paint over it. It's just paint. Nothing's getting hurt. Okay, you're losing some time, but we also have to learn from our mistakes. So really, again, there's just been these moments that have just really resonated with me and set me on my path that has led me to where I am now. Okay, let's see. In terms of, reasons to listen to me, first of all, I had to start like you guys. I didn't have an art education. When it comes to wildlife art, which is my genre, I'm a veterinarian. I am trained in animal behavior and anatomy. I've traveled and I've seen these animals in the wild, and I see how things are different in the wild. So I can really be very helpful to a lot of people, especially if you want to paint wild animals. I've been to, Costa Rica 4 times. I've been to Zimbabwe, Namibia, South Africa 2 times, and I've been to Kenya now 4 times. So Africa is one of my favorites. Trying to do more traveling within the U.S. I was just in the Tetons in Yellowstone with my friend Teresa. Hi, Teresa. So we just did a wonderful trip this fall, and in fact, I'll show you some of the paintings that are kind of evolving from that trip. And I now live in California, where I'm able to go to the coast, go on whale watches, see whales, see dolphins, watch otters and shorebirds, and it's just always, I can get out in nature a lot more and in a lot more seasons out here, which is really, really important to me. So that's a little bit kind of about who I am. I've done a lot of workshops, I've had a lot of publications, okay, great, I've won awards. But really, I think it just comes down to, I'm just a person that was inspired, that wanted to learn, and so now I want to share, and I want to help you learn as well, and get to the point where you are more comfortable and excited about being able to create something. I love to solve problems too. So if we do the math now, I've been painting for about 20 years. I went to a workshop once with the late John Sari Lester, another absolutely fabulous painter and man. So we all miss John tremendously. And John had said at one point in his workshop, you only begin to understand a medium when you've done 100 paintings. Now, you're probably all going, oof, yeah, I felt overwhelmed. I felt like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I've done like 5. I'm like, I don't know anything until I've done 100. Well, I'm now, 20 years later, again, I have more things in my life. I'm at about 130 paintings, and I will say, I do have a much better understanding of how things work. That said, I've made lots of mistakes. I've learned from my mistakes, but just so you know, you're not going to get from A to Z in one painting. It is a process, and it's a learning process, and part of that is one of the most fabulous things about art. The Renoir, it's said that Renoir on his last day of painting put his brush down and leaned back and said, I think I've learned something today. There's always more to learn. Your best painting is always the next one to come, or the one after that, or the one after that. And it's incredible. You could always grow. There's always room to grow with art. So this class is pretty much for anyone that's interested. Anyone that wants to learn some of the fundamentals of art, who wants to understand why some paintings or some photos or images like seem to resonate more. Learning a little bit more about yourself, like what really draws you in, what inspires you. Even if you don't even want to paint yourself, that's okay. Learning knowing these fundamentals and learning them can help you appreciate art and understand why some things are considered masterpieces. So this is really for everyone. If you want to try painting, great. There is no such thing as innate talent, okay? Talent is really not something given, okay? It's basically you're inspired and you study. Anyone can learn to paint. If you can tell a triangle from a circle, and you can tell something that's white, something that's gray, and something that's black, I can help you paint. Plain and simple. It's really not that difficult. Painting is all about seeing. It's learning to see and turning off your brain, making you try to create what you think you're seeing. So it's about learning to see. It's about painting shapes, big shapes to little shapes. So details are just little shapes. So that's it. It's really simple. But there are some things that work better than others, and we're going to break it down. We're going to simplify it and make it something that is attainable. All right. When you're doing this, you will reach frustrations. There are things that we're going to go over that aren't going to make sense at first. But just stick with me, bear with me, and when you have those light bulb moments, you're going to be so excited. Don't demean yourself, don't demean your efforts. We're all starting from somewhere, okay? So don't be afraid. Have some fun. Don't take yourself too seriously. And one thing I would recommend is taking notes, and I mean handwritten notes. If you really work well with typing stuff in, that's fine. But I'm visual kinesthetic learner, so what that means, I need to see something. Yes, I hear it, but if I don't write it down, then I don't recall any of it. So I have gone through a lot of the references I'm going to show you, a lot of my workshop notes, and I've taken notes on my notes and notes on those notes, and eventually when I had it where I wanted it, I actually typed it, into paper to give me somewhat of a script that I'm loosely following. So I would definitely recommend that you take notes. And let's see, we're going to talk about how to come up with a plan, how to approach a painting, how to choose your subject matter. Even with a plan, you're not guaranteed success. However, you increase your chances substantially. So again, let's not be afraid to fail, because we learn from our failures, and those lessons learned mean that the next time you're going to do it even better, and then even better, and then even better. I still make mistakes. I'm going to show you some of my mistakes and why they really didn't work. So this class, I would say the only people that this class is not for is anyone who is going to try something once, and if they don't get it perfect, are just going to quit. They're not willing to keep working at it. They're not willing to just put the effort in. It's not for anyone who doesn't want, who thinks they know everything. Okay, there's no place for ego here. Okay, you can't know everything. I don't know everything. I'm still learning. We're all still learning. Nobody knows it all. If they did, what's the point? I mean, there's no point for it. So pretty much that's it. A couple things about what we're going to cover versus what we're not going to cover. This is